Welcome to the first episode of Marginally Speaking by Ecotech, hosted by me, Mudit Singh. In this episode, we'll explore the unfolding saga of US tariffs and its various repercussions, why they happened, who is targeted, and what this means for the future of United States relations with the rest of the world. I am not alone in this discussion though. With me on the panel today is my fellow Ecotech member, Shaurya.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. My name is Shaurya Raj Gupta, and I'm a member of Ecotech. I'm really glad to be part of this conversation today as someone who closely follows the global economic shifts and the geopolitical activities. I'm especially excited to be here on our first episode and to interact with our special guest.
Thank you, Shaurya. To help me unpack the complex issues today, let me introduce to our listeners our guest for today, Mr. Siddharth Singh. Mr. Siddharth Singh, he is a journalist and the current editor at large of the weekly current affairs and features magazine, Open, which is the flagship brand of Open Media Network. It captures the political, economic, and cultural spirit of our times and stays faithful to its promise of not dishing up recycled news or opinions. We highly recommend to our listeners to go check it out. So, Mr. Siddharth, let's get right into it. What do you think is the main reason for the tariff dispute between the United States and the rest of the world?
Um, Ever since the second Trump administration, the effort there is that to somehow reduce America's trade deficits with the rest of the world. The strategy that President Donald Trump has pursued is to impose tariffs on countries individually and somehow hope to reduce America's trade deficit worldwide through those means. If you look at uh, the so-called Liberation Day tariffs, which were imposed in early April, that's got very little to do with the tariffs and counter tariffs between the United States and other countries. It's simply a device to reduce trade deficits.
It's simply a device to reduce trade deficit. So,
Yes.
speaking about trade deficit, Trump and his administration, they view the trade deficit as inherently bad. They argue that the tariffs can reduce this imbalance, the imbalance of the trade deficit, by making foreign goods more expensive and boosting domestic consumption. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Actually, it's a strategy that has not been thought through carefully. Uh, the bulk of the goods that United States consumes via imports from countries like China, from India, various consumer goods, pharmaceutical products, food items, intermediate goods, raw materials, they all are part of the American consumption basket. So if you're going to impose tariffs on them, what that does is it raises the price of these goods, the landed price of these goods in the United States, and that fuels inflation. Uh,
Okay.
so it 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 may or may not, and most likely it does not solve the trade deficit problem, but it certainly creates an inflation problem for the United States, and that's visible in recent months and weeks.
Right, sir. So basically, Trump returning to the office. So the earlier tariff rates were around 2.7% to other countries on an average, but now they've increased to 27% in the early 2025. So, what do you think is the reason for the drastic increase? It is just the trade deficit, or you think the debt situation of USA is just to blame for that?
Um, I'm not sure if you can get rid of get rid of the debt, or at least lower it by imposing tariffs on the goods that you import from different countries.
Yeah.
It's not really a strategy that has been heard of before. Uh, as far as tariffs are concerned, you're right. Right now, if you look at the current peak tariff rates, which have been imposed by the United States on almost any trading partner, they probably are the highest in almost a century. If you recall the Smoot-Hawley tariffs, which date back to the 1930s, it's probably as high as that. Uh, I'm not very sure whether this is a good strategy to reduce debts. Probably, uh, the way to go about reducing debts is to somehow manage your expenditures and then
Right.
slowly bring them down, and then figure something like that. But that doesn't seem to be much in evidence because uh, uh, the Trump administration and the U.S. Congress recently passed the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, which actually is going to lead to a fairly significant increase in debt over a period of time.
Right, sir.
Right.
It is surely gonna. So, sir, let's come to another question. So basically, there are many countries importing crude oil from Russia, like China and other many countries, like UAE, and only India is being targeted by Donald Trump for the thing. And India is not the highest exporter of crude oil from Russia. China imports more. So what do you think? Why do you think that Trump is only targeting India and not China and other countries related to it?
Okay, so he has actually imposed a very high tariffs on China earlier, but apparently that has not worked. I'm not quite sure if he imposes further tariffs because of Chinese imports of Russian oil, if that's going to make any difference at all to China. And if you look at it, China actually has very vehemently criticized this as bullying on part of the United States. It's also that I think the Americans have very little leverage over China.
Yeah,
Right,
we've
sir.
They,
seen China and USA go in a back and forth of tariffs. There was just an all-out tariff war between the two of. There was America imposing tariffs on China and China reciprocating in kind to USA, as we've seen. And still, USA has threatened to put tariffs on China regarding the same products. Have you seen the facts and figures? It was reported that America is going to put a 200% tariff on Chinese sin products in retaliation with China. So that's something.
Right,
I'm not sure whether this is a good idea because if you look at American tariffs on China, they have been going up consistently since the first Trump administration. And even during the Biden presidency, those tariffs they weren't removed, and now there are even more tariffs. Has that made any change to Chinese behavior, Chinese economic behavior, or trade practices? I don't think so.
No,
yes,
So,
is that
uh,
why America is not targeting China as much as it is targeting India for just buying the Russian oil, as they stated in the reason?
Uh, I think that may be one reason, but I think there are probably other reasons as well. For example, the Americans have their own problems with India, and Trump has often accused India of being probably the single largest. He has called India the tariff king in the past,
Yeah,
and and he and his trade advisors have continuously, indulged in their own bit of India bashing.
right.
uh, I think even yesterday,
Virgin
his
Navarro,
commerce
right.
secretary Lutnick, he actually was complaining that India does not buy any American corn, and it's simply inconceivable that India is going to open its agricultural markets and start buying American uh, agricultural commodities. That's a red line. That's a big no-no.
So,
right.
sir, do you think that India, so Trump is using the crude oil as just an excuse and like as a cover to, impose the additional 20% as Modi clearly declined open market to USA in terms of agriculture, dairy, and fishery products as the farmers of India would die and they can't keep up with the lower and cheaper prices from USA. So that could be one of the reasons for the additional 20%, 25%.
It is one of the reasons the Americans would like to open India's agricultural markets, but that's a big red line because American agricultural commodities that include soybean, it includes maize, other commodities. They're heavily subsidized. And
Right.
don't forget that American farmers enjoy economies of scale that are simply unimaginable in the Indian situation, where
Right, sir.
most of our farmers are small and marginal farmers.
Right.
So yes, that's probably one reason. I mean, they think that they can use it to price open India's agricultural markets, but I don't think it's going to work. It's politically inconceivable that any Indian government is going to agree to that.
Right.
Because India is very dependent on agriculture still.
It's just that a large fraction of our population is involved in agriculture, and if you're going to open agricultural markets, they won't be able to survive economically in any way.
Yeah, because with all the duties and everything being imposed from the foreign goods and everything, I don't think India will be able to sustain that. Especially the agrarian population here, because they mostly are some lower income bracket farmers who are mostly working and just picking our economy up.
Actually, if you look at the average landholding size in India and compare it with the United States and even Western European countries, the size is very small. The income of the average Indian farmer from these operations, it's simply insufficient for him to survive. And now increasingly you will see that even in villages, even amongst farmers, someone or the other is involved in some other trade, be it some kind of a small business or some job or something. Otherwise, relying only on agriculture for a rural family, it's a very tough situation to survive without any other source of income.
Right,
Uh,
but sir, this may be a stupid question for me to ask, but as we've seen, agriculture mostly is subsidized in India. And if we were to open our market to the world, especially the agriculture market, like wouldn't a bit of a subsidy added with the foreign products be of any use to India? Would that help in any way?
okay, so what can happen is, so you have to look at the uh, pros and cons and costs and benefits of such a step.
Hmm.
Yes, if you're going to open agricultural markets, surely many of the products that we pay a high price for domestically, say wheat, and in turn various products which are in which wheat is used, biscuits, flour, or whatever. Those the price of those products is going to go down. But that's one side of the equation. It's basically the consumers of those products who are going to gain, but the domestic producers of those goods, which is basically farmers, they are going to lose out completely. Uh, if, for example, the landed price of American wheat, hypothetically, is $10 cheaper than what is offered through the Indian mandis through administered prices, which are the so-called minimum support prices, who's going to buy those goods when the American wheat is going to be so cheap? That's why, if
Right.
you notice, even when we import wheat and other commodities, it's usually canalized through state agencies, or even if private importers are allowed to buy it, there is a kind of a upper limit or a quota set, and the price. I mean, those are tightly controlled imports.
Right. Okay. Well, that is something to think about now. So, well, moving on to another question that I have, very different from this. It's we've seen that Trump has pressured EU to put 100% sanctions on India for some reason, and while we see that EU overall they have reduced direct imports due to the sanction on Russia, some EU nations like Hungary or Slovakia they still continue to receive Russian crude oil via pipeline exemptions, right? And although the EU said that they would end their dependency on Russian energy, around 19% of its natural gas imports still come from there. How does the US differentiate its trade and tariff policies among these countries?
Okay, so look at it this way: the the stated objective of trying to get the Europeans to put sanctions on India is basically to dissuade India from buying Russian oil, right? Uh, I'm not sure whether that is as honest a policy as it is stated. Probably it's like adding one more layer of pressure on India to somehow negotiate with the Americans. Not, it's got nothing. It's got little to do with Russian oil, as you guys clearly said that even Europeans import Russian natural
Russian natural
hydrocarbons.
gas, yeah,
Yeah,
via
natural gas. And,
pipelines.
yeah, uh, plenty of Indian Russian crude, which is processed in India and shipped back to Europe, is actually used by European countries.
Right.
Uh, I'm not sure if Europe can do without completely wean itself off Russia's natural gas. It's because finding alternative energy sources or changing the mix of your energy sources from, let's say, hydrocarbons to wind or nuclear or whatever, it takes time. And even if you don't want to change the mix of your energy, even if you just want to change your suppliers, that also takes some doing, you know.
Right.
So I'm not sure if the Europeans are going to, simply agree with Trump and say that let's impose sanctions on India. At the moment, the Europeans are also in free trade talks with India for
Right.
trade agreement.
Yeah.
Uh, let's see how it proceeds.
Hopefully it goes positively.
Yeah.
So, sir, I wanted to ask Sergio Navarro accused India of profiting from buying discounted oil from Russia. And so he also claims that the money that we give to Russia from buying this oil is termed as blood money and we're funding the wars. But on the other hand, US itself buys plutonium, natural gas, and enriched uranium from Russia itself. So why do you think that they are claiming that India, the money that we give them is blood money and not the money that they are supplying to Russia itself? So, do you think they're trying to slander the Indian image in the global market, or they are just doing this out of instinct or what?
Okay, so first thing is that you have to discount that argument completely. There is absolutely no truth in that. Uh, as you stated, the Americans themselves are buying natural products from and various commodities from Russia directly.
Yes, sir.
So how is India's buying Russian crude equivalent to blood money? Even Europeans are buying natural gas, so don't tell me that that's not blood money. Or is it that if only one country buys Russian hydrocarbons, that becomes blood money?
Right.
The other thing is that um, there is a punitive 25% additional tariff on Indian exports to the United States, supposedly as a reaction or as a response to India's purchases of crude oil from Russia. It's a wholly, I don't know, it's an inconsistent policy. If indeed it's a tactic to, somehow force Russia from its actions in Ukraine and elsewhere, surely there would have been higher tariffs on Russia itself.
It's
Uh,
hypocrisy at its finest.
so it is hypocrisy. So I mean, I don't think that this is even an economic argument. It's basically it's not even a political argument. It's just simply a dogism.
So, do you think Trump has a formula to calculate these tariffs that he keeps on imposing on different countries, or it's just random that he is doing it?
I don't think that there is any that these things have been thought through. If you look at the formula for the Liberation Day tariffs, it looks to be some kind of a neat economic formula, but I'm sure you guys know that it's just the trade deficit, America's trade deficit to the particular country divided by its total goods imports from that country and further divided by two. I mean, so I'm not even sure whether what is it.
It can be called a formula or not.
It can be called a formula or not. It's
Right.
just plain arithmetic. They have arrived at a figure, and now you're just working backwards to justify that figure. That's it.
Right.
So basically, I searched it on Google. Google is telling me, Wikipedia is telling me, I don't know how much we can trust that, but still, it's telling me, for example, dividing the US's 2024 trade deficit in goods with China, some figure 295 billion by the amount that US imported from China, 439 billion, results in a 67% trade barrier value which the US assigned to China. That's
Precisely. It's got nothing to do with tariffs.
this is
Right.
nothing to do with that. It's just
It's
this
just a
is
figure
fun.
that they have arrived at. Rather, it's a figure that they wanted to arrive at.
Right.
Right. This seems very biased. This seems very biased. They just went with the most convenient formula that would give them the highest number and they could call it a tariff. That's what it seems like.
It's I don't know what to. I mean, I have no explanation for
But
who pre.
there has got to be a team working behind this. No, there has got to be multiple qualified people who are coming up with these formulas, who are coming up with all of this jargon that is being sprayed throughout the world. I mean, there has got to be some level of opposition to that as well. I mean, there has got to be someone out there who is talking about these things, how unfair or how, I don't know, wrong this is. or how inconsistent this is.
I'm not sure if expertise and the Trump administration they go along well, very well. And if you look at the like open and outright assaults on the U.S. Federal Reserve leadership, Trump has tried to fire one of the governors of the U.S. Federal Reserve.
Right.
Even the chairman of the Federal Reserve, he has been, you know, he's. I mean, if there was a simpler way that Trump could get rid of him, he would have gone by now.
Yes.
So I'm
I
not
mean,
sure if there is any expertise or anything of that kind involved. Um,
but
Yes.
we Trump has his own slogan, he has got this whole persona of make America great again. And with all of these trade tariffs as we've seen, as you've explained quite well, this is just leading to more losses for the American economy. Does Trump not know that all the actions that he is doing is harming USA economically and diplomatically?
Probably that is not so. Okay, so this is, you know, I mean, the whole "Make America Great Again" movement. Um, there is some, it's just that if you look at the level of inequality in the United States between the top 1% and the remaining 99, or the top 10% and the remaining 90, or even if the top 50 and the bottom 50, I mean, those disparities have gone up since the mid 1990s. And so, yes, it's understandable that this is a political reaction against those developments. I
Right.
mean,
I saw in a video this person was explaining this barrier, this disparity very well. He said that it is a K-shaped economy. Basically, the K shape is here, and this is the top 1%. They're getting richer, and these are all the other people. They are just spiraling downwards. That's how he explained it.
actually, there is a scholar by the name of Branko Milanovic. I don't know whether you guys have heard of him. He used to work at the World Bank, and I think he's at some university in New York now. So he has a very famous elephant curve, which actually plots uh, the inequality in the United States when you compare it over a period of time and with other countries. So yes, inequalities in the US have gone up dramatically. Uh, so at some point, this was bound to lead to a political reaction. MAGA is a political reaction to that. What
MAGA,
is
I think it's harming USA more domestically than it is doing internationally.
it's just that I'm not sure whether they have thought through the economics of MAGA, in any serious manner, because I think it's a mishmash of myths, different claims, counterclaims. These tariffs are somehow supposed to bring back industry and industrial jobs back to the United States. It's also supposed to, I mean, Trump's base in MAGA actually has a lot of resentment against people with H-1B visas. They think that it's a scam, quote unquote, a
Right.
scam,
Right.
that uh, uh, talented American workers are being denied jobs by cheaper labor
Labor.
from countries like India.
Most
I'm not
common. Yeah.
sure if, yes, I suspect that at some point of time there is going to be some kind of a reworking or simply undoing of the H-1B visa program. Uh, I'm not sure whether that's going to bring any of the high-paying jobs to the American people.
It just
It's
keeps
like,
on. Yes. So it just keeps on hurting the economy more and more, and nothing else.
yeah,
As we see, because most of the labor and people in R&D, they are immigrants. They're
yeah.
not your Native American people. And the Native American people, we see majority of them are working as CEOs of banks, or just in the service sector, which is not adding as much to the economy as the immigrants are adding. And this orthodox conservatism of America is leading to more losses in their working population more than anything.
So the thing is that America has a problem in its STEM education, uh, uh, and that has been known for a while. I mean, the first person who tried to address that issue in recent years was President Barack Obama. who realize that this is a problem. But fixing those long-term problems takes time. It cannot happen overnight. It probably will require a generation and more. Uh, so hoping that if you kick out all these unwanted immigrants, and then those jobs can be distributed between the existing labor force in the United States, I don't think it works that way. Um, the people who have legally immigrated to the United States, they bring certain skills on the table with them, certain valuable skills on the table with them. Uh, Already, if you look at it, many of these companies, they have created what are known as global capability centers in India and in
Right,
other
sir.
countries also.
Like
So
Amazon wants to expand in India.
yes,
With,
Tesla wants to expand in India.
so
like,
I
sir,
yes,
uh,
go ahead.
so there's a question that I wanted to ask in this. So Trump a few days ago announced that we have lost India to the deepest, darkest China, and we have lost a really good friend of ours. And now they are appointing Sergio Gore to come to India to have peace negotiations with us. And a few days ago only, he said that India is a great friend and our peace talks will always be open. So they, in some way, USA is dependent on India for like generic medicine because we import like 40% of the generic medicines to USA or clothing like textiles and maybe steel. So do you think that's the reason why USA has to come back to India and we have to and make us their friends again because they can't survive without us in the long run or
So
something else?
so I'll put it this way. All the commodities that you've and the goods that you've mentioned, take generic medicine. Given time, as you guys would know, supplies can be shifted. You can buy from other countries. It takes time, yes, but that can be done. As far as textiles and apparel go, India probably is not the largest exporter of these goods to the United States. It's
Right, sir.
probably countries like Vietnam, Bangladesh, other countries. I guess this is a more geopolitical thing, or geostrategic thing. The United States at one time had hoped to use India as some kind of a counterweight to China. That's been bandied about for about 25 years. But India has its own problems with China. But it's not that we will be used by some third country to be a counterweight to some other country.
Right, sir.
Obviously we will look for friends everywhere in the world, and if you look at our approach to foreign policy, it's we have bilateral engagements across the world. We don't only deal with big countries. uh, we have plenty of friends in Africa, in Latin America, everywhere, the global south, north, you name it. you know uh, and when it comes to Trump saying that he fears that they have lost India, so I can turn back the question and say that who lost India in the first place? First of all, it's like a mischaracterization. India has not
Right,
been lost or whatever. It's just that it's going to be a kind of a difficult uh, task to restore trust between the two countries. But we would definitely like to have better economic relations with the United States. For example, we would not want those punitive tariffs on us,
right,
and that's why our even through all these extremely negative and hurtful statements by members of the Trump administration, India has remained steadfast in its negotiations with the United States over the trade issue. So I think that will continue. It's not that India has been lost or anything like that, or for that matter, that India is now in the Chinese bloc, or uh, historically India has not believed in any kind of bloc politics right from its independence. This is not any different now. So I'm not sure what Trump means. It's just his figure of speech by which he says that he fears that India has been lost. I don't think there is any such thing.
I think it's because since this superpower play came into the superpower thing came into play in the world, USA has hoped to use India as a proxy against China. But whatever are differences, China and India, territorial differences, you've got ideological differences, you've got whatever these differences may be. We don't have any economic differences with China as such, right?
We have a little bit of a trade imbalance problem with China. I mean, we buy a whole lot of things from them, and we virtually export nothing to them. So there is a trade imbalance issue, which we have not been able to address. That's partly because China produces these goods very cheaply, and we don't, unlike Trump and his administration, we are not imposing tariffs on Chinese imports Chinese exports to India. Yes, there are things that, for example, foreign direct investment are in the wake of our conflicts with military conflicts with China in Galwan and Doklam, we've become far more careful in allowing Chinese FDI into different sectors. Although of late, I think there is a rethink also that in those sectors where there are no security issues or where security issues are really not pressing, we should allow Chinese FDI. But that's a different story, you know.
Right.
So we do have a trade imbalance problem with China, but we have not gone in for some kind of a completely crack up economics like the United States to address that imbalance. You know.
Right, but we saw at the recent SEO meet, we saw Russia, China, and India going along very well for some reason. It seems to be a power play by Modi or something like that. Which has just jolted USA, which has jolted Trump to his core. That because these are the three of the biggest powers in South Asia, and we also have the Quad summit coming up, which the dates haven't been announced yet. But we have seen, the U.S. Ambassador designate to India, Sergio Gore. He underlined that India is a strategic partner whose trajectory will shape the region and beyond. That's what he said verbatim. And he also said that President Donald Trump has invited India's commerce and trade ministers to meet U.S. Representative Jamie Greer in Washington, and that the specifics of the bilateral trade deal will get resolved in the next few weeks, as he said verbatim. And US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, he introduced Gore at the Senate hearing. He said that he has known Gore for a very long time and he is the nominee to India, which is one of the top relationships the US has in the world today in terms of the future, what the world is going to look like. And that came right after President's the Trump's statements about India, calling us a dead economy and
Dead.
calling us a very frustrating nation to deal with in terms of
Right.
trade. So why do you think that Trump is warming up to India after belittling us for so long? And I don't know, is there some ulterior motive that Trump has formulated, which he will come to realization at the Quad summit?
Um, I mean, it's very difficult to read President Trump's mind. One can't say that um, uh,
He
what
has a very
did.
volatile
Yes,
nature.
yes. And I think the whole Russia, India, China thing has been overblown. Our relations with Russia have always been very, very friendly, and that has been the case since we gained independence. Um, Russia is not just a great um, a top military supplier to us as far as military hardware goes, or a supplier of commodities. It's also that our relations with Russia have traditionally been very strong. Uh, with China too, we have, for all the differences, all the border dispute and conflicts, we have tried to keep a workable relationship with China. And if you notice, we have not allowed Quad or the quadrilateral security dialogue, as it was once called, to be turned into some kind of a military alliance between four different countries, or as some people used to predict it at one point of time, some kind of an Asian NATO. No. So we are fairly careful in how we other countries how we deal with other countries, and we are careful not to allow other countries to use us as a pawn in their own disputes with China. Sure, we have a lot of problems with China, but they are for us to handle. They are not
Right.
for some other country to
Come and
build.
mediate between
Yes,
us.
yes,
Like
between us.
Trump declared that he caused the ceasefire between Pakistan and India, and now he wants a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
Well, I lost count after 30 times when he said the thing, and I'm not able to answer it. And but even if you keep on repeating a statement, that does not make it more truthful or less truthful, no?
Right.
So, if you go back to those days after Operation Sindoor, you know, our leadership was extremely careful to say that yes, if the Pakistanis want a ceasefire or some kind of a, you know, halt to operations, we didn't use the word ceasefire technically, to begin with.
Right.
It is they who have to get in touch with us, not uh, some third country to
Third
say that,
country.
and actually, if you look at the poisoning of our relations with the United States, that began when President Trump issued that unwanted tweet, even before we had announced some kind of a halt of operations, and the tweet by the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in which he said that there will be talks in some third neutral country between these two countries. Uh, these were extremely reckless and careless pronouncements to be made publicly, and that actually started the free fall in the political relationship between India and the United States. And there has been no attempt at all on the part of the United States to even repair, let alone mend that relationship. India doesn't look, I mean, we probably don't care. The Americans have gone, now they have obviously gone to openly threatening India. Um, we'll bide our time, and we'll figure what to do.
Right. So, sir, so basically now the debt on USA has climbed up to 36 trillion US dollars and is projected around 2030. The interest payments to cover the debt might be more than 20% of the total GDP of USA. So imposing these tariffs could ease on the short run and make some money in the short run, but not in the long term. So do you think Trump is trying to maintain that US hegemony all around the world, as now economies are trying to diversify their portfolio by selling the US bonds and buying more gold in? So do you think that what this volatile strategy of this to impose reckless taxes on different countries has just blowed up in their faces?
So, as we've discussed earlier, it's not a sound economic policy. You are going to impose tariffs. Sure, that will bring you some revenue from the imports which come into your country, but that's also going to lead to inflation. Uh, it, Prices are going to go up, and the rate of inflation will inch up slowly. Uh, and then, it'll reach a point where it will become very difficult for the US Fed to reduce interest rates. Right now, there is a lot of you know uh, pressure on the U.S. Fed to reduce interest rates because the American labor markets, that they they are a little bit soft. The level of joblessness is inching up. So that's the classical prescription that when you're if you guys have uh, you know noted that when labor markets go into that kind of a that particular area, that particular corner, you have to reduce interest rates. But
Right.
I'm not sure the US Fed can reduce interest rates because inflation is also inching up. So they have landed them. I mean, they're not there yet, but they're going to get into a corner where it's going to become very difficult to reduce interest rates. So that's the immediate short run complication for
US 200.
the monetary
Right.
policy there.
Right.
But I'm not sure what kind of revenue is going to be available to the Trump administration that it can somehow reduce debts and deficits through uh, taxing or imposing tariffs on imports. It's not a sustainable strategy. As you said, that uh, countries that export to the United States, they're going to look for alternative trading partners. For example, India is already doing that. Uh, China probably has it has no dearth of trading partners. Every country is trying to somehow diversify away from the United States because they are not sure whether they are going to be welcome in the United States at all. So yes, it's a bit complicated. It's going to get a bit complicated for them.
And this strategy you definitely think has blowed up in their faces, this volatile trade strategy.
Probably they don't want to admit it uh, right now, but let it unroll for about a year or so, and then things will become a little bit more
Right.
obvious.
So, sir, like, do you think that India, particularly PM Modi, is trying to use this confusion of this trade deficit to the tariff dispute to strengthen the rupee currency in throughout the world, as it has gone to Russia and Russia has accepted to trade in rupee currency the petroleum that we import from them, or Saudi has also agreed to trade 15% in Indian currency. So do you think that we are trying to strengthen our currency in the global markets?
So look at it this way. We generally uh, currency management or those functions, they are generally carried out by the Reserve Bank of India. Of course, whether you want to move away from the dollar block, or you want to, as Trump has accused the BRICS grouping of trying to move away from the dollar, those are of course political decisions in part, but they are also economic decisions. You simply can't decide that I'm going to move away and I'm going to strengthen uh, my currency. A, a lot depends on what do you trade, with whom do you trade, what's like the quantum. Take for example, or your quantum of your trade with different trading partners. Now, if you look at India's trade with Russia, we tend to buy a lot of commodities from them.
Right.
Uh, Oil, fuels, fertilizers, things like that. But if you look at what Russians buy from us, it's maybe a bit of pharmaceuticals, some electronic exports, some tea, things like that. So, you know, I'm not sure if this is going to be very conducive to rupee. We have bilateral arrangements with different countries, but there's going to be an upper limit to that kind of a process by which uh, you can, as you put it, you can strengthen your currencies with other countries. It takes a lot of doing. You probably have to expand trade before you reach that zone. We are nowhere near that. So yes, we are trying that. We our bilateral trade is actively diversified away, into our domestic currency as well. But that will take some time.
Right, but as Shaurya said that we are trying to strengthen our Indian currency, right? But currently, the Indian currency is backed by the US dollars in terms of trade, right? But as we've tried, as we've seen, India has called all its gold reserves to India, and there has been talks about backing the Indian currency against the gold that we have, and also in terms of trade. So, do you think that we can shy away from the US dollars as a backing to our Indian currency, seeing that in even in the forex reserves, we have in store a lot of US dollars,
$630 billion we have, and
$630 billion in forex reserves?
So all central banks have they're prudent to diversify their portfolios to minimize risks. That's standard practice. Uh, Probably this is given the volatility in how the United States deals with other countries. uh, I think there is an added edge to that, and that the Indian central bank may decide to, diversify its holdings.
right.
But that's not a process that happens overnight. It takes some time, and I think our the Reserve Bank of India is already on onto that. I think they will, over a period of time, buy, have other holdings, gold, as you mentioned. So that's an ongoing process.
So, like Shankar, our Foreign Minister Shankar said that we are not looking to shy away from US currency. We are not looking to replace dollar. So that is the case
That's
then.
true. That's true. We have openly said that we are not trying to replace the US dollar with some other currency. There was a talk of some kind of a BRICS currency, but I think that was a stillborn idea. I don't
Right.
think that.
We haven't built upon it. That there was
Yeah.
a talks of the Swift currency, which is going to be manufactured by China, and the BRICS Global Pay, which is going to be used as cross-border transactions between all the BRICS countries and in most parts of South Asia.
No, I think that's, apart from the economics of it, it's also politically a very complicated idea.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
sir. Right.
It is
So,
political because we cannot be agreeing with every other government on everything, and but this is going to be complicating a lot of the things out there. We just I think it's better we keep our trade in just US dollars because that is apparently the standard of the world.
The dollar is the reserve currency, and look at it this way: we have a kind of a right now we are not fighting a war with China, but we do get into some kind of military situations with them. So the idea that there can be a kind of a BRICS currency which is going to be controlled in China, or I mean, it's inconceivable that India is even going to go in that.
go
And
right.
just that we are not going to antagonize the Americans beyond a certain point and say that hey, we are moving away from the dollar. It's, let's face it, it's the reserve currency, and
Right.
yeah, sure. I mean, what can happen is that over a period of time, you will see more trade in euro. There will be more, bilateral arrangements between India and its trading partners. Yeah, that kind of thing can happen. But I'm not sure that we are going to move away from the dollar, or even let alone replace the dollar.
So,
True.
sir, like as you said earlier, that the tariff it is going to have an impact on India shortly. But do you think the policies that the Indian government have, the new policies on taxation? So basically, the government has slashed the 27% to 18%, the most 80% of the items in 27% to 18%, and almost slashed the 12% tax rate to 5%. So do you think this will help increase the imports of India and help, the economy to grow and come out of this 50% tariff dispute?
Like, will it help mitigate the economic impact of the US tariffs?
Right.
Because this was what I was just thinking about as well.
Okay, so the estimates for GDP growth in 2025-26 were around 6.5% of 6.5%. But that was before the 50% tariffs were announced by the United States. Now there are various estimates that what's the hit going to be on our economy. I mean, there are estimates which are all over, but uh, the more reasonable estimates are anywhere from zero point 0.4 to 0.6 percentage points of GDP. So now, how do you make up that? One problem obviously is that finding alternative trade markets takes time. For example, we were exporting a lot of seafood to the United States. Now, all of a sudden, that's come to a halt. So we have two problems. We have to find alternative markets, but at the same time, we have to support our, uh, uh, farmers, fishermen, people who are involved in that particular sector. That's one. And then there are second round, third order effects on the Indian economy. So what you were mentioning that the reduction in GST rates from 28% to uh,
18%.
18%, and the 12% bracket has been abolished completely, and
Right.
28, you know. So yes, that probably, as you guys know, any reduction in taxes is a stimulus,
Right, sir.
Yeah.
So it's some kind of a attempt at a stimulus. It's just that these are not automatic pass-throughs of benefits to consumers. Probably the government has to do a little bit of hand holding. As you guys would know that there has been a demand for a long time that health insurance and other insurance products be exempted from GST completely. Now, insurance companies are like lukewarm towards the idea, because if uh, GST is waived off on these products, they also tend to lose, because then they can't claim input tax credits, which is basically their administrative and other costs which are bundled into the product when people like us buy them. So yes, those things have to be watched. So the extent of the mitigation through this kind of reduction in taxes, it'll we'll get to know it over the next 5 6 months or even a year. But an effort is being made by the government to ensure that uh, somehow expectations about our growth are anchored, that people don't feel that our economy is in a free fall, you know because that impacts expectations, and then people change their behavior, how they
Right.
spend, how they buy. things like that. So I think that's part and parcel of that attempt to ensure that our growth is not hit, or at least not hit very severely.
Right, sir.
Right. So you're saying that this the cutting taxes on some items might help just a little bit, except that the government will have to guide us on that.
It's just that they'll have to observe things very carefully, that manufacturers and other suppliers of those goods, they actually pass the benefits to the consumers.
Right.
And
So, do you think that boosting the domestic consumption through through these GST reductions, they can effectively cushion India's exporters and economy against the ongoing trade challenges?
okay, so they won't cushion our domestic exporters, they will cushion our economy, overall
Okay.
economy. For
Mhm.
Right.
as far as those exporters are concerned, the government is actually trying to come at some kind of a package for those people, that at least they can be provided some help, that they don't suffer too badly.
Right.
Right.
So basically, due to this, I do think we can already see the how tariffs are hurting USA itself. So like Trump has already cut life insurance for health insurance for people that was very significant to people there. Now it's no more. So do you think that Trump is hurting his country more than others due to this tariff dispute?
Okay, so I mean, how he deals with his own country is his problem. That's not the problem for other countries.
Right.
But yes, you are right that these are self-inflicted wounds. Uh, which probably they don't realize at the moment. They will in time, because inflation is a real concern in the United States, one which you can't wish away. They
Right.
also have a job market problem, labor market problem.
Labor market problem.
So they have to figure that out as well. So yes, these are direct byproducts of their economic choices.
So
Right.
basically, the tariffs are alienating everybody in the world, and the current policies themselves domestically is alienating their own population
I
as
mean,
well.
that political effect domestically is yet to figure out. We'll get to know it when there are midterm elections next year. You know.
Right.
Right.
But we've seen the repercussions among the general population right there. Was as you've mentioned before as well.
I mean, yes, there are noises that people do realize that yes, uh, inflation is. I mean, when it comes to inflation, people all around, they feel the pinch, and it's not just a American problem. It's also even in India, if inflation goes up, you know, you can actually feel that. But America has had a kind of a unprecedented level of inflation in the recent past. Uh, simple foodstuffs like eggs, they they were very expensive, things like that. So now, obviously, the price of eggs is not something which is amenable to monetary policy. That's more a supply issue. But uh, you can see that tariffs, supply chains, all these things, they interact in a kind of a fairly complex way. But the net effect is largely negative. It's not what they think it'll be, that you know uh, industrial manufacturing is going to return to the United States. People are going to start getting industrial jobs. I'm not so sure about that, no.
Right. So, sir, so one final question that I want to ask you is that so now that the Trump presidency has done this, put tariffs so heavily on other countries and make them their enemies, we can say that they have made them their enemies because every economy has been suffering the effects of these tariffs. So, do you think that these tariffs are a long-term, short-term situation? But do you think in the long term, Trump will survive? The USA will survive as countries won't forget the wounds inflicted by these tariffs on them. So do you think this is good for them? Like, because India, let's say for certain, won't forget these wounds as the economy has fallen, traders, people have lost their jobs. So what do you think about that?
So let's put it this way. It has alienated a lot of countries. I'm not sure if it's made enemies out of this thing. With the United States, it'll take a lot of doing to restore that trust. In case of India, it was like more than anything else. If you look at some of the global surveys, like the Pew Research survey about attitudes towards the United States amongst different countries, India probably had the most positive attitudes toward Indians probably had the most positive attitudes towards the United States in the last consistently for the last 10, 15 years.
Right, sir.
And with this kind of a shocking behavior, and I'm yes, it has alienated a lot of Indians. It was unexpected. Uh, I suppose that at some point the United States will course correct, whether it is during the time of the during the Trump presidency or it is after that. I'm not so sure. Uh, but the fact is that countries do respond to uh, changed circumstances. They also try to correct the uh, errors that they have made in policies. Those things happen, but right now it's difficult to say when that will happen. Uh,
Right.
yes, these tariffs cannot survive for 5 years or 6 years because by that time it'll become meaningless even if the United States removes those tariffs because its trading partners would have found other markets.
Right.
India is not going to wait for 5 years for its shrimp farmers to just twiddle their thumbs while they're unable to sell their catch. So we'll find other markets. Uh, we are also trying to explore free trade agreements with different partners bilaterally and also multilaterally. For example, we have negotiations going on with the EU. We've had some kind of a comprehensive trade agreement with economic trade agreement with Australia. Now that's only the initial agreement. Uh, the bigger agreement is still being worked out. So we also have a similar agreement with the United Arab Emirates. So we're trying to do that now. Obviously, we are not going to sit and wait for the Americans to reduce their tariff. Of course, we would like those tariffs to come down, but in case they don't do, we have to explore. Our exporters have to figure out different markets. In the meantime, the government will support them as much as it can, and so those things happen. But
Right.
let's see how it goes.
So there's a like a famous phrase when US catches a cold, the whole world catches a cold.
When
So do you,
US sneezes, the whole world
yeah,
catches
what
a
catches a
cold.
cold, right? The when US sneezes, the whole world catches a cold. So do you think now this phrase is applicable in today's market? Because now countries are moving forward and not waiting for US to change its tariff situation. So do you think this phrase has now been broken somewhat?
So it's going to be a couple of sneezes, yes, true. But after that, countries will take their own medicine and move on.
Yeah.
Right, sir.
We are not going to be waiting around for US to take 2 shots of Benadryl. We are just going to be wearing our masks and our gloves and
Correct.
sanitizing our hands. That is really a cool metaphor, though. And with that, we come to the end of our very first episode of Marginally Speaking by Ecotech. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the reasons behind the US tariffs to the ripple effects that they've created across the globe, and what this all could mean for the future of our international trade and diplomacy, and the domestic ramifications as we discussed in so much detail today.
Thank you, sir, so much for
Thank you for
this.
having me on your show.
Yes, sir. Thank you for answering all of our doubts and questions. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Siddharth, we are truly grateful for your time and for helping us unpack such a complex topics in such a clear way. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning into this debut episode. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Don't forget to follow Marginally Speaking for more conversations at the intersections of economics, politics, and society.